everyone. So this video is comparison of New York and South Carolina. I'm from New York. I lived in New York since I was like 9.5 years old. I'm 13 now. I just turned 13 July 3rd. And it's like July 26th or something. So yeah, good 3 or 4 years of me being in South Carolina. I gained a lot. I gained and lost a lot of friends. I've been through the worst times of my life, which I was kind of hoping it would be in New York, which is like being bullied, or I know it sounds weird, like, oh, you want to be bullied in New York? That's so weird. Like, I would rather everything that happened here be in New York, because that's where I used to live and everything happened. So, the comparison for me is, of course I like New York better, but do not think this, I'm not thinking or saying that New York is better than South Carolina. Because New York, here it has Chick-fil-A. I love Chick-fil-A. They have Chick-fil-A, they have Food Lion, they have Publix, they have Piggly Wiggly. No, they have Publix in New York. But they have like Piggly Wiggly, all those stores that sell a bunch of other stuff that New York doesn't have. Like the African mangoes, sushi. Some stores in New York don't have sushi. And so yeah, and then New York has Price Chopper. I forgot the other stores because that's really the store we went. Price Chopper, and then other than the stores, because that's the only store we ever went to. But they have snow. I mean, who doesn't like snow? People here loved snow. It started snowing the first year we came to South Carolina. We moved in like 2010. It started snowing, and everybody's like, nobody knew how to drive. I'm like, well, of course, because you've never lived in snow. But they did not know how to drive. They were swerving all over the friggin' road. And I'm like, my mom is an experienced driver. She lived in New York for like almost her entire life, so she knows how to drive in snow. And she would just go, hello. And people were like, ah! I'm like, oh my gosh, go to China if you're gonna drive like that. So yeah, well, like, so it was funny because where we used to live, like where we live now, it's like really, like it's big land, kind of. But so when it snowed, nobody knew what to do. They were freezing because they had no gloves, no jackets, no scarves, no hats, no socks or whatever, because everybody wore flip-flops all year round. So everyone, the same day it started snowing, drove to Walmart before it started like snowing really hard and got everything that they needed. Shovels. They thought it was going to last the rest of the winter. I'm like, it's South Carolina. It's not going to last the rest of the winter. They bought shovels. They bought, they bought sandboxes. I don't know, some person bought sandboxes, in my neighborhood, and they started building it, like, building snow castles, and I was like, that's cool. But, so, we stood up, that happened at, like, 9 o'clock at night. By 12, the snow was literally, like, 2 to 3 feet deep. And everybody was like trudging through the snow, and I'm like, I know how to walk in snow. You have to be really like light stepped. And so I was just like gliding through the snow, and everybody's like, how'd you do that? Trudge. I'm like, you need 9 years of experience in the snow. And so they were like, oh my god, I want to try that. And I'm like, no, you're gonna be like 19 by the time that you already know how to walk in snow. And it's probably never going to snow again for like 30 years or so. But I was wrong. The next year, it snowed again. But it was really light. It was only like a few inches. But that was enough to get people going. And then the next year, it snowed again a little bit. So, just a little bit. Maybe like not even an inch. But it sprinkled snow. Little frizzlies or whatever. So, I'm thinking, did I bring the snow? Dun dun dun. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm thinking, because everybody's like, Bianca, you brought the snow with you because you always loved the snow, and from the minute you woke up to the minute you were about to go to bed, you were outside playing in the snow, and blah, 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 you're like a snow princess. And I'm like, that makes no sense, but okay. So everybody, even my friends, thought I brought the snow. And so it's literally snowed every year since we came here to South Carolina. So I'm thinking, if I go back to New York, will it stop snowing? Or if I stay here, will it keep on snowing? Doesn't look likely because it's really hot. I mean, really hot. But yeah, so the comparison. So New York, it snows. Okay, these are the things you could do here in South Carolina. South Carolina, you could horseback ride. You could hunt. You could four-wheel. You could go on trails. You could... I don't know what else. You just could do a bunch of things. New York, you could hunt. You could four-wheel. You could ride horses. You could go on trails. You could play in the snow. You could make snowmen. You could snow surf. I forgot what it's called. Snowboard. My bad. Snowboard. You could ski. You could ice skate on real ice instead of just going to a little indoor building. Could go on real lakes because they're frozen about halfway through the lake. You could roll down the hill on the ice. I mean, on the snow. You could a bunch of other things, but you can basically do everything that you can do here in New York plus more. So I don't know why people are saying, oh well, South Carolina is so much better than New York because it's hotter. Okay, tell me this. Haha. Heat stroke is better than New York. I mean, heat stroke is better than... I would literally rather be in negative 20 degrees weather than get heat stroke. Because, tell me this, okay, this is, add in the comments. Would you rather be, would you rather live in a place that's constantly cold or constantly hot? Tell me that. I would rather live in a place that's constantly cold. Because in a place that's constantly cold, you could light a fire without actually going inside or outside. Like, so because that's what people think. Oh, I could go inside for the AC. No, would you rather go inside? Would you rather live in a place where you can never go inside? With, like, you could go inside to a little hut, like a house, but it can't have AC. So would you rather live in a place that's constantly hot with no AC or constantly cold with no heat, like as in radiators or anything? I would rather go in a place that's constantly cold because you could pile and pile and pile on clothes, plus you could start a fire to warm yourself up. I mean, it's not like saying, oh, well, I'd rather live in a place that's hot because you can start an AC. Well, nothing that's like mechanics. It has to be all you, like all nature. So I'd rather live in a place that's constantly cold because you can pile on a bunch of clothes and start a fire. Well, you know, if it's constantly hot, you can only take off so much clothes without being totally naked, without going out in public, and then you have no AC. So I mean, think about the choices. And then if you had no hair tie, oh my gosh, God forbid that. But so yeah, like, I don't know, people are like, oh, South Carolina is so much better because it's country and everything. I'm like, well, South Carolina is good. I agree with that. New York's good. I agree with that. None of them is better than the other. Just because you can do more things in one place and one place is hotter than the other doesn't make one better than the other. I'm like, they're both the state. I mean, really. And just because South Carolina was one of the first 13 states of the United States just does not mean anything. Okay? So, and I think people here are like racist towards city people. Well, I don't know if that's not racist, but they don't like city people because when I came here, or I told people I'm from New York, and they're like, ew, you're from New York, you're city, I don't like you. And then they waved the rebel flag in my face. I'm like, funny because, ew, you're country, I don't like you. And I waved the New York flag in their face. And they're like, ew, get that away from me. I'm like, you're so weird. I like country people because I have country friends. But the thing is, they don't act country around me. That's the thing I do not like. I cannot stand it. I like their accents, but I hate it when they act country and then they show off because I'm from New York. They're like, I'm country because I could do things better than you. I'm like, really? Because, I had a story, but I forgot what it was about. There's one time when we went into the woods back behind my house. And they're like, oh, well, you're from the city, so you're a city girl, so you might want to stay back near the house because you might get too scared or whatever by spiders. I'm like, I've been here for 3 freaking years. I'm not scared of spiders. Even but when I lived in New York, I wasn't scared of spiders. So, I don't know what your problem is. And so I walked in the woods with them. The person that said that I was scared of spiders ran into a spider web and started screaming. I'm like, whoops, looks like you should be in the city. And they're like, I'm a country girl, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay. So we kept on walking, and there came a huge puddle, like 3 feet deep. I wasn't kidding, it's really deep. It wasn't even a puddle. And so I was like, well, let's just go through it. And so the country person's like, no, let's go around it because I don't feel like getting my boots dirty. I'm like, oh my god, you're a bad reputation for being country. And so, of course, we had to go around it. And then I walked through it because I'm like 5 feet tall. So I was able to walk through it on the way back. But, of course, the country person walked around it because they didn't want to get their boots wet. I'm like, oh, boo-hoo. I was like, seriously, my chest and down was friggin' soaked. And I didn't give 2 craps. So, I mean, it's really not a big deal if your clothes or boots get wet. It's called drying them in a washer or dryer. Well, drying them with a dryer. And air drying your boots, maybe? Yeah. But then, so I think people here, they underestimate about what us New Yorkers or city people can do. I'm not a city person or a country person like I think I said in there earlier, I don't know. I'm more like in the middle. I like to do country things. I like to do city things. I like to dress up sophisticated, but then I like to get rowdy and play in dirt and everything. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being both. So, that's why I'm saying neither is best. So, that's why I'm saying they're both equal. Like, New York's not better than South Carolina. South Carolina's not better than New York. They're both the same. Let's make sure they're the same. Yeah, they're both the same. I mean, seriously. And I found some pretty sophisticated people here. Like, they do not like getting dirty, and they're always wearing friggin' heels, and I'm like, that's something you'll see in New York. But I used to wear heels and everything. But in an instant, I would take those things off and friggin' jump in mud if I had the chance. So yeah, like, I don't know if people are like, oh, well, blah, 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 you're from New York, so you suck, and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, you know what, whatever. I'm just gonna stick to what I do, and yeah. So, tell me what you think. Do you think New York or South Carolina is better? Or if you think they're both equal. I hopefully didn't offend anybody in this video. I hope I didn't, but if I did, I'm so sorry about that. It's just to kind of say things that I don't really mean when I'm like, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, but would you shut up? So this is what the video is, and hopefully you guys like it. So yeah, bye guys.